Hi, this is part two of Where is the Love? So I've gone for a walk and I was listening to part one and I thought I must make a part two. Um, so in part one, I talked about like how people who are well intentioned are happy to take accountability for themselves. But then I listed other attributes of those who are happy to take accountability for themselves because it's important to point out that people could have good intentions or claim to have good intentions when they do things that are harmful when they are being asked to take accountability for themselves. And this also goes back to where is the love, because a lot of people grow up in homes where their parents might do harmful things. And then when the kids are older, maybe they'll be like, yeah, you did this to me and it messed me up and, it destroyed my sense of self or whatever. And then the parents is like, yes, well, I had your best interest at heart when I did it. And, you can't be angry because I did it for your own good. So that's not actually taking accountability. And that's one of the things that happens in this world is when people and leaders in the political, economic, and social spheres, when they do things like with the COVID vaccine, for example, oh no, it was for the best. We thought that we were doing what was for the good of the people. What was for the good of the people was to run proper tests on the vaccines to make sure people didn't end up sick and dead like that's happening now. That would have been for the best. Their real intention was to make money. And similarly, with a lot of parents who raise children in unfavorable and sometimes abusive circumstances, their real intention is not to maybe teach the child the discipline of waking up early and cleaning their room. The real intention is to teach the child to live a life of utter subordination to the domination or the dominance of the parent. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's very important to just highlight that good intentions are not going to just cut it on their own. The good intention must bear the fruit of well-being in the people to whom your intentions were directed. Okay. And so what you find also in situations like this is like it's such a quagmire of lovelessness, where the parents themselves probably grew up in a home where they were taught that taking accountability, like, I mean, how many of us know stories of like a child will break a plate or a glass, and then they get beaten for it, or berated so harshly with the words that are so unkind and so unloving that the child's sense of self is shattered. They don't feel safe. They don't feel like they can ever take accountability. And so we learn it at an early age, isn't it? Like now you break something, you're not going to like take accountability. You'll be like, Joe, I don't know. It must have been. And then they'll probably blame it on the baby or the small one because they know that that person will probably be treated more leniently. Or if there's a pet, say, I know the cat knocked it over or something. And so, unfortunately, we do have a situation where taking accountability in this world is very difficult because we are in a state of fear of being punished from when we were kids. So once again, it's about people being held to account, parents being accountable for how they raise their children. Children don't ask to be born. People bring children into this world out of their own free will. No one is forcing you to do it. Yes, okay, fine. We know that we live in a society where people are put under pressure to have children. Yes, we know that we live in a patriarchal society where, in some areas and in a lot of areas, that patriarchy is expressed in such a toxic way that women are put upon in marriages to have children. In many situations, they are toxic patriarchal religions where a woman is not even allowed to use child birth control so that she can avoid having too many children. You know what I mean? Her body is just at the disposal of her husband to do it with as he sees fit. And if he wants her to impregnate her every year, it's his prerogative. She must just figure it out because she's his property according to this patriarchal religion, toxic patriarchal religion. Okay, so I know that there are all these coercions that happen to people. Okay, but the truth is, and this is the truth, because there are women who have grown up in highly patriarchal, toxically patriarchal societies, who have said, I'm not going to stand for this, and they've walked away. They've ended up destitute, some of them. Some of them have been pursued. Some of them have been killed in so-called honor killings. You know what I mean? But there are people who have said, I would rather actually die than live under the domination of a system which treats me literally like an object. Okay. So it shows you that there is free will. And, if you are going to, and it's harsh, it's harsh. I'm not trying to be harsh. I really don't want to belittle the suffering of anyone. And I do think a lot of women really just don't even know what to do. Some of them are so conditioned from birth, basically, to be so ashamed of wanting anything other than what their parents want, that when it's time to get married, they will just fall in line. They will marry whoever their parents say they must marry. They will have however many children their husband say they must have, because essentially the husband then takes over the role of the abusive and domineering parents. Okay. So, but at the same time, and I'm not talking about those women in those situations, and it's horrific. And I really, I feel like I wish they can be freed and, find real love, and I wish that for all of us, real love, but I think there are a lot of us as well who have much more ability to use our agency, and who can do much more to take accountability, who aren't living in those hyper harsh environments. Okay. And one of the things that taking accountability means, is when you see that you are at the risk of repeating the same toxic patterns that you grew up with, that made you feel afraid and ashamed to take accountability because you're afraid of a disproportionately harsh punishment that you were going to get for being honest. I think it is very incumbent on us and take accountability for ourselves and the patterns that we are displaying by seeking the healing that we need to get over that trauma of having our sense of self so undermined by parents who made taking accountability such a shameful and painful exercise. Because if we have children ourselves, we don't want to perpetuate that on them. We want them to feel comfortable to take accountability, knowing that we love them enough to say, yes, you did wrong, but I don't love you less. I just know that you're a human being, but I know that for the future, I really would like it if you could be someone who is more careful. But if you make a mistake, you take accountability. It's okay. We all make mistakes. We're all human beings. You know what I'm saying? And that is loving. That is loving as a parent. And that brings a situation where, because our children are feeling loved and supported, they will be much more ready to take accountability when they do something. If they make a mistake, or even if they do something intentionally wrong, they will take accountability. And because they know you love them and support them, they will be much more inclined to self-correct from doing the wrong, because I think also the blame shifting happens when you feel like the situation is unfair. And so why should you take accountability to an unfair environment? Let me just blame other people. And one of the things that we see is a lot of men will blame women for the things that patriarchy imposes on men. Like, for example, a man will say, as a man, I can't show my emotions to a woman because she's going to call me weak. Women, one of the biggest issues that women have about men is that they refuse to show and express their emotions. So why would a woman call you weak for you expressing your emotions? The reality is that the patriarchal system has taught men that they will be weak if they show their emotions. And the patriarchal system has told men that women want a strong, stoic, ultra-masculine man. And that's the kind of man a woman feels safe with. That's absolute crap. And I think, this is one of the things where we really see blame shifting. The patriarchal men, because they know that they are benefiting from the patriarchal system, because it gives them that feeling that egotistically they are like at a higher level of superiority to women. So they're not going to interrogate the patriarchy. They're not going to say to the patriarchy, you're making me feel less than human because you're telling me that I can't be vulnerable and just express myself. So instead of confronting the patriarchy, what's the next easiest thing to do? Blame the woman that the patriarchy says they have to be this thing for, And, I think some men who are like this, do an experiment. Go find a women's only organization or a community. Ask them to stay with them or visit them for a week. I can guarantee you, by the end of the week, you are going to be expressing your emotions. You're going to be crying, because that's what women do for each other, and that's what they'll do for you. It is the patriarchal system that's to blame. So, I'm just saying, let's take accountability. Be honest with your intentions. Don't pretend that you have good intentions when you actually don't, because you're so disconnected from yourself. And yeah, be loving. Thank you.